Tonight's story begins with the kind of silence that makes your chest tighten. The kind of silence that only happens when a family has broken in places a world never got to see. Because as the Braxton universe continues to crumble, one question is spreading like wildfire. Did Towanda Braxton really create a dirty plan against Traci Braxton's son, Kevin Jr., using him for drama, using him for storylines, using him to replace the missing sisterhood on camera, only to cut him off and walk away when she didn't need him anymore? And the truth hits even harder when you watch that sit-down between Kevin Jr. and Kevin Sr., because the moment Kevin Sr. opens his mouth with a father's softness, a father's grief, a father desperately trying to protect Traci's legacy, you can feel something in Kevin Jr. tighten up. Something rehearsed, something influenced, something that doesn't belong to his son speaking to his father. And that's where the whispers about Towanda begin to feel real. Because whenever the camera pans away from real sisterhood, whenever we see the sisters filming separately, whenever somebody gets mysteriously replaced, erased, or pushed into the background, somehow Towanda's shadow is always standing right there. And when Kevin Jr. starts reacting like a ticking bomb to the simplest comments about Lauren, comments about family bonds, comments about who next of kin is, it doesn't sound like a grieving son. It sounds like someone who has been filled with stories, warnings, and fears. Every time Kevin Sr. says Traci loved Lauren, every time he says Traci felt Lauren was pushed out, every time he mentions the family dynamic Traci used to talk about, Kevin Jr. jumps like someone touched an exposed nerve. And when you watch it closely, you can see the traces of someone else's voice in that boy's anger, someone else's influence in that discomfort, someone else's agenda inside his reactions, and all fingers point back to Towanda Braxton. The same Towanda that Traci herself once called a snake. The same Towanda fans accuse of being the quiet puppeteer of the Braxton family. Because the truth is, when the Braxton show needed a storyline, when the producers needed conflict, when the sisters refused to film together, when Tony and Tamara were barely present, it was Towanda who stepped forward and aligned herself with production. And when Traci became the fan favorite, when Traci's storyline grew stronger than the rest, when Traci became the underdog the world fell in love with, that's when the tension allegedly exploded behind the scenes. And in that tension, people say Towanda looked at Kevin Jr., a grieving young man trying to find his place, and saw a storyline she could control. And so, according to insiders, Towanda allegedly moved close, allegedly whispered things, allegedly shaped conversations, allegedly guided what he should feel, what he should question, who he should trust, and who he shouldn't. Because when Kevin Jr. sat in that interview and said he expected to return to the show, that he believed he would be welcomed back to represent Traci's legacy, to speak on his mother's love, to continue what she started, that wasn't a delusion. Someone made him believe that. Someone promised him that space. Someone convinced him that the family wanted him on camera. But who controls the show now? Who is actually filming? Who has the producer's ears? Who is shaping the narrative behind the scenes? Not Tony, not Trina, not Evelyn. Not even Tama or Dot, it's Towanda. The same Towanda who hasn't allowed Kevin Sr. to return. The same Towanda who allegedly pushed Traci's side of the family out of the picture. The same Towanda who benefits the most from controlling what does and does not make it to television. And when you put the pieces together, the pattern becomes unmistakable. Kevin Jr. was brought close for the storyline. Kevin Jr. was emotionally guided when he was vulnerable. Kevin Jr. was shaped to distrust his father. Kevin Jr. was positioned as a replacement for Traci's absence on screen. And then, when the storyline was no longer needed, Kevin Jr. was cut off, shut out, erased from the new season without warning, without closure, without a conversation. And behind that decision, fans see one name, Towanda, because the tone in Kevin Jr.'s voice, the defensiveness, the random hostility, the way he misinterprets kindness as attack, the way he shuts down whenever Kevin Sr. mentions anything about Traci. It doesn't feel organic. It feels influenced. It feels guided. It feels like someone else's fingerprints are all over his emotions. And the allegations say that someone is Towanda Braxton, the same sister who allegedly used Traci's pain for storyline, while the world thought they were one united family. As the conversation between Kevin Jr. and Kevin Sr. continues, the cracks inside the Braxton family story grow wider, darker, and more revealing. Because what you're watching isn't just a father and son trying to reconnect. You're watching the aftermath of influence, the aftermath of grief, and the aftermath of whatever Towanda Braxton allegedly whispered into the corners of this family when nobody else was listening. The moment Kevin Sr. mentions how deeply Traci Braxton loved Lauren, the moment he tries to speak about the warmth and motherly connection Traci felt toward that girl, the moment he brings up how Traci believes certain things were happening behind the scenes, You can see Kevin Jr.'s entire face change. Like he suddenly steps into a script someone handed him long before the cameras rolled. Like he's defending people he barely interacts with more than he defends the father who raised him. And when Kevin Sr. talks about being next of kin, about being the man Traci stood beside for decades, about being the husband she chose over and over again even when things were hard, even when the family judged her choices, even when the world didn't understand their marriage, that's when Kevin Jr. snaps again. It's the strangest, saddest thing to watch because next of kin isn't about opinions. It's about law, marriage, commitment, and love. Yet Kevin Jr. reacts like someone told him to challenge that truth. Like someone fed him an idea that his mother's husband somehow didn't have the right to speak about her, didn't have the right to represent her, didn't have the right to hold her memory. And when you trace that energy back, it doesn't lead to grief. It leads to influence. It leads to someone shaping the narrative around Kevin Jr. so tightly that he can't even hear his own father's heart without checking it against someone else's version of events. And the allegations say that someone is Towanda Braxton because every time Kevin Sr. touches a sensitive family truth, every time he mentions things only he and Traci talked about privately, every time he brings up conversations he and Traci had for years, you see Kevin Jr. stiffen like he's being reminded of warnings, like he's hearing echoes of Towanda telling him, don't believe him, don't trust him, don't listen to him. And that's what makes the story so heartbreaking because this isn't just about a son acting out. This is about a son who looks like he's been pulled into directions until he's tearing at the seams. This is about a son who was grieving, who was lost, who was vulnerable, and who, according to rumors, became a perfect target for someone who wanted control over Traci's storyline. And when Kevin Jr. says he hoped to return to the Braxton show, when he says he believed he would be allowed to speak about Traci, to keep her legacy alive, to honor her memory, that's where the betrayal hits the hardest. Because someone made him believe he had a place there. Someone told him he would be welcomed. Someone made him feel needed until suddenly, without warning, the doors slammed shut in his face. And those doors weren't shut by Tony, who barely films. Not by Tamar, who works on her own terms. Not by Trina, who's buried in caretaking. Not by Evelyn, who's not controlling anything. The only person with the power, the access, the production connection, the backbone of the current storyline, is Towanda Braxton. And fans noticed it too. How the moment Kevin Sr. appeared, the family retreated. How the moment Kevin Jr. tried to speak publicly, the family tightened their circle. How the moment the world started asking why Traci's side wasn't included, the silence grew louder. How not a single sister showed up for Traci's funeral, blaming the husband, blaming the decisions, blaming everything except their own refusal to support their sister's family during the darkest moment of their lives. And when you put all that together, the funeral drama, the on-camera manipulation, the sudden freeze-out, the refusal to bring Kevin Jr. back, the focus always returns to the same center point, Towanda and her alleged need to control the narrative, and her alleged need to control the narrative. Because the uncomfortable truth is this: Traci Braxton was loved by the public, adored by fans, rooted for by viewers. She was raw, real, emotional, honest, everything the other sisters struggled to be on camera. And when Traci became the heartbeat of the show, when her storyline overshadowed the others, when her growth became the most compelling part of the entire franchise, the balance of power inside the family shifted. And when a family is built on image, that shift is dangerous. So when Traci passed, the sisters didn't want her husband speaking. They didn't want her son speaking. They didn't want her friends speaking. They didn't want anyone representing Traci who wasn't under their control. And who is the most controlling? Who manages the smallest details? Who has the tightest grip on producers? Who has the strongest need to control the image of the family? Fans say it over and over, Towanda. That's why when Kevin Jr. pushes back at his father, when he avoids the truth, when he misunderstands simple statements, it feels like the sadness of a boy who has been guided by the wrong people. And when Kevin Sr. sits there, holding decades of memories, watching his own son talk to him like a stranger, the tragedy becomes clear. This isn't just a divided family. This is a family where manipulation allegedly replaced love, where storylines replaced loyalty, where power replaced truth, and where a son became a pawn in someone else's hands. And if Traci Braxton were alive to see this, she would be heartbroken. Because Traci fought for her family, even when they didn't fight for her. Traci held on when everyone let go. Traci stood alone when the sisters pushed her away. Traci's legacy deserved better, and the people she loved deserved to be honored, not erased. But in this version of the story, in this season of the Braxton downfall, the loudest fingerprints on the destruction don't belong to grief. They allegedly belong to Towanda Braxton.